Hello and welcome back to the PLP. It's the second league fixture weekend of the season, and it's a bit of an NLP special actually. Though we've got action from the Championship, League 1 and League 2, we've got a weird configuration where all four of the teams, drafted teams in the NLP, are actually playing each other. We didn't get that at all last season, even with five, so to have it the second game of the season, it's arguably the most critical weekend of that division, and it's up already. Don't think there's any need for preamble today, to be honest. And we are starting in the Championship this time. A first look this season at Mr. Foyster. As ever, has been very active in the waiver window, but not as active as he'd hoped this weekend, also on Friday. Him and Craig have been in a bit of a race to snap up budding Ipswich signings. Mr. Foyster is a victim of his own success in that he obviously falls much further down the waiver wire than Craig and gets beaten to him every time. This time missing out on Florentino Luis. And almost losing out after 10 minutes here, if not for the offside flag. Wilfred Bonney keeps his place up front. He had a pretty successful debut. Actually, as you saw by the league table at the start of this, he had a very successful opening week, topping the table after that first game, in fact. He beat Derby 4-1 at home. Goals from Bonney, Rudiger, Tevez, and the now Folklore and Krasnodar heading Mr. Volkov. Cracking finish from MATTch. Volkov, at the time, I thought was a youth player that had come through the ranks. We are starting to see a few of them now pop up. And then I checked, and turns out Foyverton had literally signed him the morning of the game, and I never go to the transfer sort of confirmations page, because if I veer off piste, then that's when I normally get thrown into the media room instead of onto the pitch. It's a glitch in the matrix. So I didn't look beforehand. He ended up starting at right back and scoring, and he's been promptly shipped off to Russia. One player who few teams could do a lot worse than looking at is MATTch, who could have had a hat-trick in this first half if it wasn't for the offside flag and that header. Cracking goal. These away trips at Championship level are going to take on a bit of a extra spice, I'd have thought. 3 that got promoted, and Levi, to be fair, last year handled most of the League 1 challenges pretty well. But in theory, this should be obviously a step up. Not exactly a step up for Ronaldo and Tevez, but if we're trying to make things interesting and not just presuming that these 3 are going to go flying up without much hindrance. Hans Seeger's in goal. Started life with Zig at Wimbledon. One of the many hundreds that have left over the past 2 years. Interestingly, none of Foyster's waiver pickups have started today. It's not really a surprise. I think they're mostly squad members, to be fair. Interesting to see if any get off the bench. Is he on? No, I don't think so. Crystal Palace B actually opened their campaign with a 1-1 draw away at Newcastle B, so not a bad result for them. Odsonne Edouard with their goal. So they've got decent depth as well. He's not even started today. So I think that's sort of the slight difference between League 1 and Championship level. Just maybe the type of players that can be brought off the bench as well. Second goal for the away team does look a bit of an inevitability at the moment. Of course, as I say that, curse that keeps on giving. Apologies if the coverage, in inverted commas, is a little bit stuttery today. Again, my laptop feels like it's going to absolutely explode in the heat. Should do it. I wouldn't quite put him in the same category as Henry or a couple of the others I mentioned in midweek. But I don't think Ronaldo's still hit his peak, to be honest. Obviously dangerous for everyone else when he does. When you've got the likes of, I don't know, Foden and Cantona, I'd say Ellister. They've probably outperformed him up till now. Because of that double header in the NLP, we've only got one game from each of the other three divisions today. So one from the Championship, one from League One, only one from the deluge of League Two, just to make sure we do get that all-important double header. And a second opportunity in as many weeks for Mr. Major to get off the board in PLP land. Won't be easy today, obviously playing LuTom. Not sure when Foyster drafted him in the summer that he did think Wilfred Boney would be playing quite as big a role quite so quickly. With a bit of reshuffling, he's keeping the likes of McManaman out at the moment. And a debut for, I believe, anyway, for Savo Milosevic. Immediately ended with an injury. My powers are getting stronger. I only had to mention his name and I broke his leg. Cracking defending there. That's a hat-trick. 8 minutes for an opening game. Comfortable. That's 9 goals in 2 opening games. Very solid start for 2 seasons ago League 2 champions and last year's League 1 runners-up. Down to League 1. FM's actually going in order for a change. Liverpool B, led out by Steven Gerrard, completely by accident that one. Gerrard, manager, is one of the Villa managers by default, and he's found his way to a Liverpool club nonetheless. Levi, as you can see, got off to a pretty decent start last week. It's his second attempt to try and get out of this division, and I guess on paper would be the favourite to do so. He kicked off last week with a 3-0 win. Brace from Nkunku and Coutinho getting him over the line. Liverpool B actually weren't helped by a 25th minute red card from Neil Ruddock, so not particularly surprising. Ruddock, who spent last year at LuTom, arriving back in Liverpool Red with typical flourish. They ended up losing 2-0 to Arsenal C thanks to an Eddie Nketiah brace. So I don't think they'll be holding out much hope for putting points on the board today either. That team is pretty shocking, and I'm not entirely sure why Ruddock's allowed to play. I know he will have had the Carabao Cup to serve, but must have been 2 yellows that saw him over the line within 25 minutes, which is very impressive. Just to serve a 1-match suspension. Pretty sure if it's straight red you get 3. So that is Neil Ruddock in a nutshell. 2 yellow cards in 25 minutes. Midweek siesta. Back for the next weekend. Good work, Neil. Alongside Lovren, who I'm pretty sure was here at LuTom as well last year. Has this been a complete... Maybe at Gourlayverpool actually. Speaking of the devil, I've never said someone's name and they do something good. Levi wasn't a million miles away from getting promoted or being in that mix last year. Obviously lost in the player final. But if anything can be blamed for not putting him in the automatic picture, it was his away form. So, very quiet alarm bells ringing from this opening half. A typically Núñez finish in a Liverpool environment ensures he goes in down. FM's hitting the cliches hard today. Gabriel Jesus going off injured as well. And actually, if he does go on to lose this game, he'll be the second of the 5, well technically the third of the 5 drafters to have dropped points within those first 2 weeks. Obviously Dauncey was a bit of a special case in that he lost to Hart Chamberlain in an all-drafter clash, so someone had to drop points there. But Louis also, very surprisingly, lost at home to Bolton B. That was also another red card to blame. That was Michael Essien within 6 minutes indeed. You'd think that must have been a straight red. But Levi can't seem to convert any of these strong chances. There he is. Proving me wrong. 2 and 2. And enough time for a winner. Levi had a pretty quiet summer, and he's only made 2 attempts in the waiver wire, and both were outdone by other people. So his team is much the same as last year, and unfortunately his away form is pretty similar as well based on that. Just the one game from League 2, but what a potential game it could be. First look at the tractor Bolge for this season, and actually a second look at Connorwich City. We saw them lose 4-2 away at Danielsea last week. His week got a little better. Both of them did actually. Craig also lost 3-2 at home to Arsened, so it wasn't a great start for him either. But they are both through to the Carabao Cup second round. They had decent midweeks. And then Craig had a very good waiver wire. He'll be happy, although neither of them are starting, but I'm not sure he'd have expected LuTom or Luis to go straight in. Connor, meanwhile, lost out on Peter Crouch because Crouchy would rather retire than play for him. That's not me being mean. That's literally what happened. I offered him a chance to move to Connor, and he said I'll be a manager or a coach. They were his demands. So he only ended up with 4 nows in the end. Like I said last week, despite Kolarov and Maddison goals, a pretty subpar debut from Michael Owen, and they didn't really look like take anything from that away trip to Danielsea. Craig, on the other hand, I mean, stats-wise, was very even. Goals from Di Maria and Mitoma on his debut, not enough to stop the now traditional Arsened early good form. Looking at those two teams, especially the tractor Bolge, I think it's about as strong a lineup as he could put out, I think. Certainly 2 home losses consecutively to begin the season would be on the verge of disastrous, you'd think. But to be frank, it's just been a shit game. I was hoping for a dramatic derby. There's 4 nows for on his debut. If he wants to contribute anything to this Snorefest, I think Connor would take a draw. He certainly would now. And Milenkovic slab heading it into his own goal. Great work from Gareth Southgate off the bench. Look at him, recycling so professionally. I say it was his slab head, I think it was his slab dick that's punched that into the top corner. Bergkamp to finish it. He had a very good pre-season. I was looking through the results before last week. Bergkamp had a really good pre-season. Gotta say, the David Moyes experiment at Connorwich not going well so far at all. And that'll do it. Another deflected goal. And East Anglia is very blue. Sandro Tonali not yet had his head turned by a London club in PLP land, seeing off Connor in what turned out to be quite a comfortable win. Steadied the ship, and I'm sure if you'd given Craig an option of winning last week or this week, he'd have taken this one. And so, for the second time in PLP history, we're seeing, let's see if I can get the name right, Majouhinho's Blues. I'm going to go with that one. Very similar lineup to last week. I think Paulinho's starting place is different to last week. I can't remember who it was alongside Delph. It wasn't Paulinho, and actually Rocastle, who I think on paper is his best player we got in the random round, at least made the bench after recovering from injury. But this is about as tough a fixture as you can get. I think on paper the second toughest fixture you can have this season. I'd say maybe away at otbCraig based on last season would be the toughest. But a draw would certainly go down well here. LuTom meanwhile got off to a good start last week. And despite playing officially a drafted club, would be expecting a win, but this is an early chance. Oh. And it's a chance the other way. What a counter-attack. And it's a debut goal for the ever-reliable Ansu Fati, who's literally just joined for 32.5 million from Thomarse. Bit of a surprising move considering how reliable he has actually been for Mr. Keeble. Straight into the action, straight onto the score sheet. His 6 games on loan for Brighton, making him eligible for this project. And he's been a menace ever since, to be frank. Be interested to see if Jason does get involved in the waiver wire in the next 2 weeks. What a goal. Alberto Moreno went off injured the other day. Tom was a bit nervous about his diagnosis. Turns out he had a very minor calf strain and just decided to walk it off. Fair play. That rest has done him the world of good. But yeah, going back to Jason, I think he might need some reinforcements. I think not for me to choose who people start scouting and going for. But there is a certain Dennis Wire on the waiver wire. Dennis Wise on the waiver wire. Wire on a waiver wire. Let's go! He's missed 2 sitters in 2 games. Should have got an equaliser the other day in the last minute. Who'd have thought it? I thought Emil Heskey would be more clinical. I'd actually make LuTom favourites this season, I think. His transfer dealings have been very astute. You saw Lenny Oro back there. That's a 55 million move from Dauncey's Devils. Got Cherky in the draft. Ansu Fati's come in. I'm pretty sure there's 1 or 2 more as well. That team would not look out of place in League 2 after the first draft at this point. Still got Julian Alvarez as well. Would be nice for Majouhinho's Blues to just score a goal, to be honest. Get this project up and running for Jace. Wholesale changes. And the first look at David Rocastle. It was actually a very handy random round pick up, but unfortunately not really doing much to stem the LuTom tide. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't really look too much into this game in terms of the broader season. Last week was a much more damaging loss. A lot of season still to go. Interesting for Harry Redknapp to go to a 4-2-3-1 today, or at the second half at least. So there's a little bit more flexibility. I think he inexplicably went to a back 3 at one point last week when chasing the game. So, I mean, he's got options. I think Dean Henderson would like the option to just go home at this point, though. Go on, Emil. Oh dear, Emil. It's going to be so tough to pick just 2 teams to go up this year. So I think the other 3, no disrespect to Majouhinho's Blues, that's why he's their best player. Oh, it's unfortunate. They're so closely matched. Manchestaff otbCraig, you'd hope the former would rouse a bit of a challenge, unlike last year. otbCraig came so close to going up, and I say LuTom on paper have the strongest team. So to only pick 2 out of those 3 is going to be really tricky. Surely heading for a pretty stressful playoff final next summer. And you'd think a much more closely contested race to top spot than we had last year in the end. Oh, Heskey. They've looked like scoring. Just can't seem to get that first goal in the PLP. And actually at this point it would be good if their first goal wasn't just some meagre consolation. Let's hope it's next week as part of his first 3 points as well. As it is, LuTom confirming what we thought from last week. They're looking decent. Here are two of those aforementioned challenges. Last season, you'd have definitely made otbCraig favourites. They had all the form in the first half of the year, and Mightiness, a little blip around sort of January and February, finished well as well up until the playoff final. Manchestaff, on the other hand, never really got it going. But a 2-1 away win at Aston Villa D last week doesn't sound a lot when you say it out loud, but they were the games he was definitely losing last week. So Van Gaal in charge, Sheringham and Cole up front, Beckham back at right wing back, which was his initial aim, and pivotally Nemanja Vidic holding the fort. They've got a bit of a different complexion, he says, as Wesley Fofana, also a new acquisition, jumps above them all to give the away team the lead. I think one of Liam's only sort of remaining concerns was who would play in that number 10 role. He was hoping, I think, more for Cunha than Kagawa. But not horrendous, I guess. That's offside, I think, surely. Other than that, I'm pretty sure it's the lineup that Liam would want, minus definitely the goalkeeper. Obviously brought in Senna Lamans in the summer draft. And got rid of Barthez. Definitely wasn't anticipating Sergio Romero taking his place between the sticks instead. Pretty uneventful first half. We've had 2 shots for otbCraig and 2 goals. Surely not 3 and 3. Unfortunately, it's a very similar story as the past 2 seasons for the home team. Can't seem to get those shots on target. The back 3 just seems to leave so much of a gap. Unless Beckham's putting in a cross, can't seem to play through teams with this formation. Wesley Fofana, meanwhile, is enjoying himself, even if he is playing at right back. Colin Hendry, another recent sort of trade element. Christ, doesn't help when you're defending like that as well. Colin Hendry keeping his place at the back. Craig's built a bit of a reputation for liking some sturdy 90s footballers. Carlton Palmer doing the business for him last year. He's unfortunately looks like he's lost his place to Olivier Dacour. A bit more French flair in that midfield. Solidified by sturdy Colin Hendry and his lovely blonde locks. Called it. Only really happens if Beckham's putting in a cross. Which, you know, is what he wants from that right wing back, but I'm sure he'd like other avenues of danger as well. I think he'd also probably rather Dorgu than Daley Blind at left wing back, if possible. Been better the second half, but nowhere near enough. Still not a single shot on target. And Craig, sorry, after winning his first game 4-0 at home to Wolves, 7 goals without reply, 6 points without any danger of dropping any. Really early doors here, but you'd say it looks like it's between him and LuTom, as you might have predicted in the odds. A late shift to 4-2-3-1, shows a bit of versatility. A David Beckham knock's not pleasant to see, and neither is that result for Liam. otbCraig and LuTom making the early running in the NLP. And now let's dive through the divisions. A lot of results to get through, as always now. A lot of leagues to get through. And we'll start off with a shock result for Fabrizio Ravanelli in the second minute, meaning that Thomarse lose the second game of the season despite 18 shots. Man of the match performance from Georgi Kinkladze. It's lovely for the 90s purists to see. Not so good for Mr. Keeble, especially considering that Foyverton have won and now also Ellister City. Foden doing what he did for most of last year alongside Cantona. See if they actually played up front together. They did. That was the dominant strike force that took them to the title last year, the League One title. Not even Brian Deane could stop them. That's all we've got there. League One. Sky Lews only 1 point from 2 games. Rashford and Aguero giving them a commanding lead. Deckled over Reed and late Craig Bellamy goal. Weird start to the season, it's got to be said. Bellamy off the bench. I think he's about 50 years old now on this. So draw for Louis, draw for Levi. A win for Dauncey. 4-0 emphatic, putting to bed that loss last week. Penalty for Sturridge, but apparently it wasn't enough to keep him on penalties for the next one, which Mason Mount scored, but Sturridge did finally get his second, adding to Doku's opener. Have I missed somebody? It's 1, 2. Have we not got 5 at this level? Oh, we've got Sheff, but he's got his Community Shield final tomorrow. So we'll dive into Lawrence as well. 6 points from 6. And Gareth Bale, who keep forgetting, to be honest, how dangerous Gareth Bale is. 90%, I thought it was possession then, just passes completed. 71% possession, and the faith in Mattpies continues. And Tom Huddleston. Pretty perfect start for Lawrence at League 1 level. Down to League 2. 2 wins out of 2 for Mr. Torrance. Coventry B, unfortunately, have had 2 away games at drafted teams and been dismantled by both. Other than an injury to Jamie Carragher, Sanchez, Suarez and Dembele making it a pretty perfect day for Zach. And it's 2 wins out of 2 for me as well. I'll take any away win. Doesn't matter if it's non-draft opposition. As Ferdinand dropped by the looks of it over Femi, don't mind that. Actually Cabaye that needed to get me over the line. Actually, I don't mind the stats at all. Very good win for Bustin Villa. Had a really tricky start to the season. I don't think Paul would have been too depressed with 2 losses even. I mean, away at Warringham and then away at Dan City Cal. And he's ended up with 3 out of 6. So that's a pretty good return. Not sure when he drafted Xavi Simons that he imagined him up front with Mark Hughes, but it's worked. They've both scored. The ever inconsistent and unpredictable Dan City Cal living up to their billing. Dan City Y having a very good start to the season. That's 2 wins out of 2 for them, and a Carabao Cup victory in between. That 4-4-2 under Clough, working wonders, it must be said. Debut for Pablo Hernandez only came in on Friday. But Shevchenko and Drogba, some striking heritage there. And the Red Whall continue to have a very checkered start to the season. Didn't get off to the best of starts last week. Did get through in the Carabao Cup, but Danielsea 2 wins out of 2, admittedly 2 home games. But we'll be chuffed with that. Schürrle and Rice in the final 10 minutes. Everything happened in the final 15. And Arsened won last week 3-2 away at the Tractor Bolge, and have lost 3-2 this time, despite actually playing 10 against 10 men for 75 minutes, and being 2-0 and 2-1 up. It's a hell of a comeback from Gourlayverpool. Tijani Reinders and Hugo Ekitike, two very, very astute signings in the summer that have taken them from NLP newcomers to bona fide League 2 level. The pickup of Nicky Butt, also helpful. As Santi Cazorla missed penalty. Look at those, XG of 4, that's mental, rarely see that. Massive defensive effort from Gourlay. Leeds United comfortably seeing off Blackpool as you'd expect. Vieira and Rafinha doing the first half damage. 4.42 XG, I don't think I'd see more than 4. That is one hell of a team. That's probably a dark horse for this season actually. Marshy lost last week. Difficult game away at Dan City Cal to start off the year. That more familiar midfield three of De Jong, Schweinsteiger and Van Bronckhorst steadying the ship and setting up a comfortable 4-0 win. No sign of Sesko yet in the league, but to be fair, Son and Marmouche more than held their own this week. Still got quite a few more. Another home win for Warringham, who looks so dangerous in these first 3 games across League and League Cup. Going to be a horrible place to go. And actually, to be fair to Jazz, 16 shots and a higher XG. You can take encouragement from that. Less encouragement from Tim Flowers, seemingly having an aneurysm in goal. But Anderson, Haaland and John Barnes doing the job for Matt. And what a win this is, not in terms of grandeur or dominance, but in terms of how needed it was. Really not been at the races for the first 2 games. Was unfortunate to have an all-drafter clash in the first round of the Carabao Cup, so lost 2 out of 2 this week. But Defoe, who again got himself sent off, so it must have been 2 yellows last week as well. With Fernando Torres up front. Torres, who was denied a move, I think he's been denied 2 moves in the last 6 months, one to Barcelona and then one to somewhere like Watford, I think, the other day. Gerard and Alonso in the middle in a 4-4-2. That is more like it under the tutelage of Ranieri. I think this is much more what he had in mind. Oh no, Defoe got injured, it was Moberg that got sent off. That was it. So it's good to see Defoe's made a recovery. And unlike midweek, he's got 2 strikers up front rather than a Kocher and a Ismail Assar. Don't care about that West Ham C result. And then we've gone through these 2 games already. So just have a quick look at the league tables, for whatever they're worth at this point. And as you'd expect, it's Foyster and Matty making the early running, just as they did in League 1 last year. Thomarse with that weird loss against Derby today, putting him a bit off the pace, but I mean, we're so early on. I'd say more than the loss itself, the thing that might concern Thomas is just how easily Jamie and Matty have seen off their first 2 opponents. They're scoring for fun. Thomas maybe just looks a little bit weak for goals right now. League 1, Lawrence adapting to life at this level very seamlessly. And actually, alongside Bolton B, who saw off Louis last week, the only team to have won 2 out of 2. Sheff will obviously have that chance when he finally makes up his fixture. He's in Community Shield action tomorrow against West Brom A. Dauncey getting off the mark today. And in League 2, how many teams we've got there? We've got 7 who've won 2 out of 2. They're all drafted teams, which is exciting. Alex, Sig, me, Tom Gourlay, Dan Gregory, Matt Warrington and Dan Wyman. All as perfect as you could hope for at this stage. So I suppose me and Wyman can be happy with not conceding so far. Then again, you look at the likes of Matt Warrington and Alex Todd, I'd say, who I think have played 2 draft teams who come out of 6. That's pretty sizable warning sign. At the other end, Connor and Tom Wall are the two teams that really want to start making a mark soon. They've even got some non-draft teams ahead of them at the moment. And finally, in the NLP, the two teams that came out on top of those all-drafted clashes today sit first and second. Neither of them conceded. Both have scored 6 and 7 respectively, and have left Manchestaff in mid-table, and unfortunately Majouhinho's Blues rooted to the bottom after 2 games. I'm quite confident, he says with bated breath, that won't be the case for long, and we'll hope next week he can get himself off the mark. In the meantime, that's all for this week. I'll be back in touch for the Community Shield final tomorrow. See you then.